Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. It started with a quiet Sunday evening, the kind that lulls you into thinking nothing significant could ever happen. I was sitting alone at the corner table of a small cafe, the hum of the city around me muted behind the glass, my coffee long gone cold. I hadn't expected to see her there, not after everything, not after betrayal that had shattered months of trust and left me hollow in ways I hadn't even recognized until that moment. Her name was Emily, and for over 6 years she had been my world. But 6 months ago, I discovered what I'd feared in whispers and shadows. The late-night messages, the little lies, the nights she claimed to be working while someone else held her attention elsewhere. I confronted her once, quietly, painfully, hoping for some shred of honesty. She denied everything with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I stayed silent after that, swallowing the anger, the humiliation, the ache in my chest, convincing myself that distance was the only way to survive. The silence had been my armor. I had poured myself into work, friends, long walks, and occasional late-night book. I had no interest in revenge, no desire to confront her publicly. I simply wanted to exist without being pulled back into the chaos she had left behind. Yet here she was, standing by the window of the cafe as if fate had decided to mock me. She didn't see me at first. Her laughter, light and careless, floated through the room like she had never hurt anyone. But when she turned, her gaze swept across the cafe and paused, just for a moment, on me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe too heavily. I stayed silent. The world around us seemed to slow. The barista called out an order. A couple laughed over a shared dessert. A bicycle bell rang outside. All normal sounds, but every one of them felt distant, like I was underwater. Emily's lips parted, perhaps to say something to a friend, and then she glanced back at me, her eyes widening slightly. Recognition, confusion, and maybe, just maybe, remorse. I could have gotten up. I could have stormed out, demanded an explanation, or let the anger I had suppressed for months spill into the room like fire. But I didn't. I stayed silent. She hesitated, then took a step toward the door, and for a fraction of a second, I thought she might leave without speaking. But then, the impossible happened. She spoke my name, my full name, loud enough for me to hear over the chatter, over the hum of the cafe, over the city that had moved on while I had been left behind. "Ethan," she said. The sound of it made my chest tighten. My mind raced. What did it mean? Was it an apology? A taunt? A question? I didn't look at her. I didn't let her see the effect it had on me. I stayed silent, letting the air between us carry the weight of months of betrayal, of sleepless nights, of unanswered texts, and dinners eaten alone. Her eyes searched mine. She hesitated again, as if deciding whether to approach or retreat. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of what had been said and what had been left unsaid. She was beautiful in that moment. Cruelly beautiful, as if she hadn't hurt me at all. And yet I remembered every lie, every betrayal. Every single night she had chosen someone else over honesty. Then she did something I hadn't expected. She lowered her gaze and whispered, almost to herself, "I never meant for it to end like this." I felt a pull, a dangerous shift in the balance of my carefully constructed calm. My hands clenched under the table. I could feel the heat of 1,000 unspoken words threatening to erupt, and yet I stayed silent. Emily moved closer, careful, measured, as though testing whether the ice between us was still solid. I could feel her presence, could smell the faint perfume she had worn when we were happy together, before the betrayal. For a fleeting second, I questioned myself. Should I speak? Should I let her know the depth of the pain she had caused? But I didn't. I stayed silent. Then, without warning, a man walked in behind her, tall, confident, wearing a tailored suit. He wrapped an arm around her shoulder, kissed her cheek. The sight hit me like a physical blow. I knew this was a man she had met during the months she claimed to be working late, the one whose name I had stumbled upon in that cruel, fleeting moment of discovery. My stomach twisted, my mind reeled. The temptation to rise, to confront, to yell, to expose everything was overwhelming. But still, I stayed silent. My silence had become a weapon of its own, a shield and a statement. It said more than words ever could. It said, I see everything. I know, and I refuse to be manipulated again. Emily's gaze flicked to mine one last time, a flash of guilt, or maybe regret, passing across her face. Then she smiled faintly at the man beside her, and they walked out together. I stayed put, silent, watching the door close behind them, letting the weight of it settle into my bones. For hours afterward, I replayed that moment in my head, the sound of my name, the sight of her with him, the tightness in my chest that refused to loosen. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I stayed silent. And in that silence, I realized something. The betrayal had lost its power. The anger, the humiliation, the heartbreak, it was hers now, not mine. I left the cafe hours later, stepping into the chill of the evening air. The streets were busy, full of people moving on with their lives, oblivious to the storm that had just passed within me. And for the first time in months, I felt free, not joyful, not healed, but free in a way I hadn't expected. But as I walked toward the subway, my phone buzzed with notification. A friend checking in. And just like that, the quiet evening stretched ahead of me, full of possibility and uncertainty. Emily's voice lingered in my mind, her name echoing like a question I didn't yet have the answer to. And I knew that when we met again, because it wouldn't be as before. Something inside me had shifted irreversibly. The betrayal had ended, my silence had spoken, and the next chapter of our lives would unfold with consequences neither of us could yet imagine. I spent the next few days in a kind of quiet limbo. Work, friends, routine, they all tried to pull me in, but my mind kept drifting back to that moment in the cafe. Her voice, her eyes, the fleeting flash of guilt. It was like a puzzle with missing pieces, one I wasn't sure I wanted complete. I kept my phone on silent, my messages ignored, because I had learned the hard way that engaging meant opening wounds I wasn't ready to treat. Then came the message. A simple, almost mundane text. Can we talk? No apology, no explanation, just those 3 words. My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend it never arrived. Another part, a deeper, more stubborn part, wanted to see her, to hear her admit what she had done, to finally extract closure. I didn't respond immediately. I waited. Hours passed. Then finally I typed, where and when. We met that evening at a quiet park on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place where streetlights cast long shadows and the world feels suspended between reality and memory. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench with her hands clasped tightly, as if holding herself together from the inside. She looked up, startled, then composed herself quickly. Ethan, she began, voice low, hesitant. I know I hurt you, more than I can say. I made mistakes. I stayed silent, not out of anger, not out of pride, but because I wanted to hear everything, every word, uninterrupted. I wanted her confession, her reckoning, to be her own weight, not mine. She inhaled deeply, then continued. I got involved with someone else. I thought I was unhappy, but I was just scared. Scared of facing what I had built. Scared of facing myself. And when you didn't react, when you didn't confront me, I realized I had underestimated what you meant to me. I didn't mean to destroy us, Ethan, but I did. Her words hit me differently than I expected. Shock, yes, but also a strange sense of clarity. She had admitted it. She had named the betrayal, outlined the fracture, acknowledged the damage. And yet, there was something else, something in the way she looked at me, vulnerable, uncertain, that made the rage I had buried start to soften into a different, sharper emotion. Control. I stayed silent. I said finally, my voice steady, deliberate. For months, I let the silence do what words couldn't. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I watched. And I waited, because I needed to see if you would ever truly face what you did. And now you're here, asking for conversation, expecting forgiveness or explanation. She flinched as if struck and looked down at her hands. I just wanted a chance to tell you. You had plenty of chances, I said, letting my voice carry the weight it had held for months. And you didn't take them. You chose lies over honesty, comfort over confrontation, and betrayal over transparency. I didn't respond then, and I won't now, not in the way you expect. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't look away. I stayed silent for a long moment, letting the words hang between us like a bridge neither of us could cross. And in that silence, I felt the shift I had been waiting for. The power was no longer hers. The pain, the uncertainty, the chaos, all of it had returned to the one who caused it. "Then what now?" she whispered. I exhaled slowly, letting the cool evening air fill my lungs. "Now we move forward. Separately. I forgive you, not because I need to, but because holding on would mean letting your choices control my life. And I refuse to be controlled by someone who doesn't value me." She nodded slowly, tears sliding down her cheeks. There was no anger now, only the stark, painful realization of what she had lost. And I, for the first time in months, felt the quiet weight of freedom. Not joy, not relief, but clarity. We stood there in the park, the city lights flickering in the distance, a cold breeze tugging at the edges of our jackets. She reached out briefly, almost instinctively, and I allowed my hand to brush hers, not to rekindle anything, not to apologize, not to claim her back. Just a fleeting acknowledgement that we had shared a life, a betrayal, a memory. "I'll always regret this," she said softly, "and I'll always remember it." I replied, calm, steady, "But that memory will not define me." We walked in opposite directions, each step measured, deliberate, the silence between us heavier than any conversation could have been. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The betrayal had ended, but the lessons had settled deep, and the silence I had chosen was no longer a shield. It was a choice, a declaration, a life reclaimed. Later that night, I sat by the window of my apartment, the city alive below, and thought about the strange power of staying silent, how it could amplify what words fail to express, how it could turn betrayal into clarity, chaos into control, heartbreak into freedom. I didn't miss her, not yet, not really. What I felt was something stronger, a recognition of my own worth, a refusal to let someone else dictate my peace. And somewhere deep down, a quiet hope lingered that one day we would both understand how devastating silence could be and how liberating it could feel when finally wielded on your own terms. And in that realization, I found a strange, unshakable peace.